Okay, LekDog, you're back, mate.
I'm back.
You're back. We're going to look at 2006 in this episode 2 of the Carlton Redraftables. Give me a snapshot. What happened in 2006? Because we know that we've just drafted Murph and Josh Kennedy and Anderson, but mostly Murph and Kennedy. So what happens in their first year and what happens to Carlton?
Yep, so it doesn't go super well, spoiler. So we thought it couldn't get worse than winning the wooden spoon. We actually regressed and won one less game. We only won 3 games in 2006. Murphy, I believe his season was cut short because of a shoulder injury.
That's right. That was dirty dog Brisbane Lions, mate. They didn't like the fact that he didn't go onto the father's son.
Yep, so they dogged him. But we still had Brendan Vavola dominating, kicking bags of goals. He had 84 goals for the year. He averaged 4 goals a game. And Eddie Betts kicked over 20 goals. So we had a strong forward line.
Yep.
Still couldn't put it together. And my memory of it is that fans were not happy, believe it or not, winning 2 wooden spoons in a row when the club had previously, 2 years before, only ever had one in its existence. And my dad was still mad that we moved from Princess Park. So the club adopts a youth-first policy heading into this off-season, and we see some huge changes. 12 players are retired or delisted, and you've got to fill them up with something. So let's have a talk about what we did.
Absolutely. So I guess we start with, who did we get rid of? There's some serious names here.
There are some serious names here.
Run me through them.
Well, the first 2 retirements, Barnaby French retired. He played 71 games for us. And
Big bad Bananaby.
Yes.
Yeah.
He so this was a sign that it's interesting. So he retires and we need a ruckman, and geez, we had a crack at finding a ruckman. We drafted about 4 ruckmen this year, and then in the next following 2 years as well. Adrian Deluca also retires. So a couple of guys who play senior footy, Barnaby French obviously regular senior footy, leave.
Yeah.
And then a few other players get delisted to make way for some youth. So
it's a real Steve Silvani circa 2015 job, isn't it?
It is. It's a huge list turnover in 1 year. And some of the names that get delisted, we don't need to go through them all, but Luke Livingston, Troy Longmuir, Justin Davies. There's a few guys. Ian Prendergast, who gave one of the great podcast names to the Ian Prendercasts.
He did.
Shout out to them.
Shout out to the boys at the Prendercast Network. Love your work.
So a bunch of players get cut, and we've got to fill the gaps, and we're going for youth.
I need to mention one more name here. Trent Spawn. Oh, mate, it's a fascinating list we can see here. Let me just run through the names for those, just for the sake of being complete.
Thorough.
So there's Daniel Batson, Chris Bryan, Callum Chambers, Justin Davies, Luke Livingston, Troy Longmuir, Corey McGrath. Was a battler. Speaking of battlers, Ian Prendergast, Jesse Smith, and Trent Spawn. That's a solid list of delistings. So what? We went to the draft and drafted, traded.
Yeah. We didn't make a trade this year. It was all draft. The club just said, we are sick of bringing in battlers.
Yep.
We're going to draft hard, and talent will lift us up. And it maybe works. We can talk about it.
It was another situation. First pick. Midfielder, we had just drafted Kennedy the year before. We had Favola, Eddie Betts. We start getting a bit of a groove going. Like you said, Favola's kicked 86 goals. 84 goals, my apologies, for the year. So we don't need a forward. We definitely need a midfielder and I guess a ruckman. So Gibbs, when you went back, I remember Selwood was in this draft, but I remember Gibbs having the hype about him as well. He dominated in that grand final in the SANFL, played senior footy as a 16, 17-year-old, so it seemed like a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think it's still a no-brainer. There are obviously players who have had more illustrious careers in the draft, but for us, for what we needed, Bryce Gibbs was put in the leadership group before he played a game.
Yeah.
Well, awful decision, but it shows you where we were and what we thought of him. So he comes in, what did he play? 231 games for us, kicked 137 goals. People forget he kind of played everywhere throughout his career for us. Midfield, went forward and kicked goals. Towards the end, he went to that sort of half-back, and he had one game where he had like 45 disposals or something. So
I remember that against the Eagles.
He was a talent man, and I think he was probably the right selection for us. Him and Mark Murphy were able to grow together and lead the midfield, and when we got good again, for a very brief period of time, they were the two at the coalface for the most part. So,
not going to lie, I would have loved Joel Selwood.
Yeah.
Would have loved Murphy, Selwood.
Yes.
I mean, it all sounds great now when you put them based on their careers. Now, I understand that any exercise like this, obviously, we're always going to be able to pick a better player. I'm not aggrieved at all with the year before with Murphy, because I still think that at Murphy's best, he's just as good as anybody else that came out of that 205 draft. When I think of Bryce Gibbs' best, and when I think of his career, and based on the hype and what his potential was, I still feel like he didn't reach the absolute heights that he was billed to have. I thought he showed it in flashes. I remember games against Geelong in 2014 and maybe 16 where he really was the guy. I remember can't forget his 2017 year. He was really good for us. Yeah, obviously you love anyone that plays for the club. You obviously give them that admiration and that respect. Bryce Gibbs was the last of our worries from this draft.
Yeah, he was. It's worth noting that I think whoever we brought into the club was going to not hit their peak at this point.
Fair.
I think
that's true.
The culture and the situation affects them. So to still get that much out of him, I think he was 17 or something, and we put him in the leadership group. He never had a chance.
I didn't think of that. That's also true. Didn't matter who
we would have ruined anyone who came to the club at this point. But let's move on. Let's have a look at who else we took in this draft, because I hope we like ruckman. We needed ruckman, so we got them all. With our next pick, we took Sean Hansen, which was actually a priority pick, and the first round priority pick.
Pick 17.
I guess what was his highlight for us? He got with Megan Gale. That was pretty good.
Do you remember the spin goal in 2012 he did against Collingwood?
No, not off the top of my head.
So that's my favourite game. We played him round 3. We smashed him by 10 goals, but there was a particular goal that he kicked. He grabs it out of the ruck, does a spin move, kicks a goal. And that's what I remember about Sean Hansen. Like, the idea of him was unbelievable. Yeah. This athletic ruckman with the body that he had. And it was always like, oh, gee, if he can just get it, if he can just figure it out, he's going to be a superstar. I don't know. He played footy. I mean, he played AFL.
He did.
So there's that. He played 98 games.
Yeah, and for us, we played him as a ruck forward. We played everyone as a ruck forward, so...
We still are.
We still do. We don't really give people a chance to develop in their position. Is he a pick 17? History says yes, but I think if we go down this list, we probably got better ruckmen in this draft alone.
Yeah, for sure.
So the next bloke we picked up was one of my favourite players, and I guess you can class him as a ruckman. He's Sean Grigg.
Yeah.
And pick 19.
Another ruckman. He was a premiership
ruckman. So we got 43 games out of him, and then he went on to play like 214 games total. So had a much better career post Carlton, which we do. Okay, for the first couple of years, there's a lot of players that leave and have better careers elsewhere. Josh Kennedy, Sean Grigg, there's a few more, but we start to get some back in the next year. Stay tuned. We get some back.
They're coming. So Hanson was 17, Grigg was pick 19.
Yep.
Okay. I will say this about Grigger as well. I remember he was the Nick Graham before Nick Graham.
Mm-hmm.
So he used to tear it up for the Bull Ants. And he used to go okay in the AFL, but he was that guy I remember just needed a run at it. He wasn't a guy that could just come in and have 30. He needed to build his way into it and let the speed of the game sort of adjust to him. But a great servant. We obviously we got rid of him too early.
Yeah. And
it's a shame, but happy for him that he won a flag.
Yeah, no, very happy for him.
Yeah.
This draft, we had a lot of positions to fill. Clint Benjamin was drafted with pick 51. He never played.
I don't remember him.
I don't even think he's on the Blueseum because of his. That's how good he had his career. We drafted with 67 a bloke called Joe Anderson. He was sort of a big, hard-running defender who could play midfield. They'd really had high hopes for him to come in and bolster the backline because the backline was starting to get a bit weak.
Yeah.
And then they eventually moved Bryce Gibbs back there to fill that hole. And just as a matter of interest, he's Jed Anderson's brother, and I think his sister Jasmine plays AFLW. So
great fun
AFL
fact.
family.
Very much a fun fact there.
We managed to get another ruckman here in the preseason draft. We took Kane Ackland. St Kilda actually tried to keep him, but we we snagged him because I guess we really, really, really wanted a senior ruckman to play straight away.
Destination club, mate.
Destination
Bringing
club.
in the big dogs.
He barely played after that first year he's at the club. So a range of injuries and the fact that we had 10 other ruckmen on the list who all were probably better than him at that point. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he came. And he's a name that we kind of remember.
We do. It's when your Essendon mate's taking the piss out of you or your Collingwood mate's taking the piss out of you, he's usually one of the names that comes up.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to say some stuff in this series about players. We love them all. If you played for Carlton, we love you. But we're allowed to critique you.
Yep.
Another player...
We had to watch them play, mate. Fuck.
I paid to watch them play.
Yeah, exactly right.
Cameron Cloak, who was one of my early favourite players and one who I just thought never quite got a run at it, but we took him. He's probably another ruckman in this.
So pick draft. 9 at the preseason draft.
Yeah, in the preseason
How
draft.
did we have pick 1 and getting Kane Ackland? How do we have pick 1 and 9 in the preseason draft?
Only a few people took part in the preseason
fair.
draft.
Okay.
So,
okay, fair.
I think this year in 2020 only one preseason draft pick was taken. So
okay.
It's kind of similar.
Yep.
So Cameron Cloak came across 36 games, 25 goals. I always thought he was a solid option for us when Houlihan was down or when Fev didn't play. That wasn't that often though. No. So he was okay. I guess he got punched by Santanto to help him that one time.
I remember him having moments. There was some solid moments. He had some solid hands. He just didn't go on with it. He just far from our worst, but far from our best.
Yeah, another guy who, like a lot of these players, was really good VFL. He averaged like 3 goals a game in his last year in the VFL, but just couldn't do it at AFL level. And I think one thing is I don't know what the thinking was behind this draft, where we take a bunch of ruckmen, a couple of them are mature ages, but then we don't actually play them in the AFL, and we're just kind of, I feel like we missed out on so many opportunities to develop guys in this period for us. And I mean, the next pick says it all because he's better than the last 2 ruckmen we've talked about, and it's Sam Jacobs.
This is the rookie draft.
Yeah.
So Sam Jacobs, pick 1 in the rookie draft.
So this is our 4th ruckman in this one draft.
Wow.
Or in this one draft period, and arguably the best one of the lot, and the one we played the least and shipped off. He only played 17 games for the Blues. And part of that was injury and form, and there was a lot of ruckman he was competing with. Because I don't know if you remember. I remember we had Jacobs at one point in later years, Cruiser and Warnock as well, and you just didn't know who was the ruckman.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess I kind of get the ethos of let's just pick 4 of them. One of them's bound to be good. The problem was the only one that was good was traded.
Yes, he wanted to go home and we traded him for a couple of picks.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so...
But, I mean, he hadn't shown much at Carlton.
No.
So...
No, it was huge.
I do remember at the time it being not a massive loss.
No.
However, history will go and tell us that it was a massive loss.
Yeah, it's another one of those hindsight things where we let a player go who hasn't done anything or shown anything, and they become a 200-game player at their other club.
Yep.
But we do actually strike some gold as we move forward in this rookie draft.
Oh, yeah.
And we take Michael Jameson, who is, I've said this about a lot of players, seriously one of my favourite players of all time.
Yeah.
You get a guy in the rookie draft who's a big key defender. He was up and down in form, but then I think, I can't remember what year it was, maybe 2011-ish. He just clicked for him one day. And he was the best until he got injured that year. Yeah. He was the best defender in the comp.
I remember him doing a really good job on Revolt a number of times. And there was probably, like a 2 to 3 year window where Jamo was one of, if not the best one-on-one defenders in the league. Yeah.
And was pretty efficient by foot, and he's like a worse Jacob Wiedering, I'd say. Yeah. Similar sort of style of play. Can be that general. Could intercept when he was at his peak. And I mean, the club loved him. He was in the leadership group. He was the captain whenever Juddy was injured or not, or suspended or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think he's a great find in the rookie draft.
Very much so. So let me just recap who we pick up with the draft. So pick 1, Bryce Gibbs. Pick 17, Sean Hanson. Pick 19, Sean Grigg. Pick 51, Clint Benjamin. Pick 67, Joe Anderson. Then we go to the pre-season draft. We pick up Kane Ackland and Cameron Cloak with picks 1 and 9. And then the rookie draft, we go pick 1, Sam Jacobs. Pick 17, Michael Jameson. And then we end up with a gentleman by the name of Ross Young with pick 32 in the rookie draft, who I have no information. I have no memory of.
He was the first player picked up using like this mature age rookie rule.
Okay.
In the AFL, and because he'd never been aligned with a club, but he'd been playing at the Bull Ants for years and years. So he was a mature age recruit. Another really good VFL player who didn't do anything for the Blues.
Okay. Well, there you have 2006. Fantastic. Does it get better in 207?
Slightly.
We'll wait and see.